Coming to you from the M&M Exterior Studio in Knoxville, Virginia, this is Flushing It Out with Samantha Spittle, the introvert's extrovert. She talks to people so you don't have to. For now.
Welcome back to Flushing It Out with Samantha Spittle, the introvert's extrovert. I'm here with my friend Christina Ammerman. She's a master mindset healer and also queen of the world.
You actually said it. I love it.
You knew as soon as you said it. Of course I was going to say it. When you ask someone, how should I address you? And they tell you, by golly, you listen.
Well, thank you for honoring what I said. And thanks for having me here. I've been so excited for how many weeks ago has it been that we've had this on the calendar?
It's been a while.
I think I've rehearsed this conversation like 4 times. So as I said to you earlier today, I'm excited to see what version of it that will be totally unlike any that we already had in my head will actually come out. Yeah.
I said I did the same thing because we went back and forth. What are we going to talk about? And so, I'm just excited to see what unfolds. So before we get started, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about you so they can know who you are? That's an open question.
Yeah. Like that's the part I didn't rehearse. Yes. I didn't prepare for. What to know about me?
Well, why don't we start out with what is a master mindset healer?
Okay. Thank you for that direction.
You're welcome, girl.
I'm like, well, I don't know. What do people want to know?
Where do I start?
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. And also because of just knowing you and sharing a little bit of your story, I think if you tell us what that is and then just kind of what that's all about to you, because I think that'll give everyone a good idea of who you are as a person. Okay. What you're about.
Okay. So Master Mindset Healer is a title I've given myself. Like it's one of those, the IRS does not have a category for this. Facebook doesn't have a category for this. I'm always choosing other on everything.
Very good.
So what it's about is helping you change if we look at what we mean by mindset, it's your thoughts and it's your emotions, and really the emotions that drive what you think and how you perceive the world and how you perceive yourself, which is so incredibly important because whether you're enjoying life or not, whether you're getting what you want out of life or not, all ties back to how are you perceiving things?
Who you are as a person, a friend, a parent, a spouse, right? It's all connected to how you see things.
It absolutely is. The basis of my work is that all of this gets formed in the so-called formative years, ages 0 to 7.
Oh, I was just thinking I'm like thinking how old my kids are. Like, shoot, they're all getting out of that age. Yeah. Have I totally screwed them up?
So, and the reason why the ages 0 to 7 are the formative years is because of the stages in which the brain forms. We don't actually get our critical thinking abilities until age 7, or that's when they finish forming. So from ages 0 to 7, each of us was a sponge, just like absorbing, mimicking the people around us, especially our authority figures, which are usually our parents, and of course, in the beginning, and then teachers and ministers as we get older tend to be other authority figures for people. And so how we see the world, how we interpret behaviors of other people, what we consider right and wrong, what we consider appropriate for different roles like mom, teacher, business person, all of that. So much of that we almost like inherit from our parents in childhood, and now we're acting it out as adults. But it's so ingrained in us that we don't even realize most of the time why we do what we do. There's a guy out there, a scientist, teacher, person named Bruce Lipton. I listened to a webinar once that he did, and he said, as you go throughout your day, only 5% of what you do and why you do it is governed by your conscious mind. The other 95%, you're not even aware what you're doing or why you're doing it. Now, I'm sure a part of that may include like you're not thinking about your breathing and your digestion. That may be a chunk of the 95%.
True. Yeah.
But still, I think that leaves so much room for those subconscious thoughts and feelings that are barely blips on the radar in our mind, but have such an impact on us.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to take a second to absorb all that. It's good. It's good stuff, because that is, we were just talking before we started about how we both are kind of the peel back the layer people.
Yeah.
And so I feel I was joking this morning when I was talking about my, just kind of what I've learned about vulnerability and how other people have studied it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you've had lots of education with that. And I feel like, oh, I just use my life experience of potty accidents and things like that to kind of learn. But that's why I love having these kind of conversations with people who, like you and I have talked about, we have very similar views. We come at them sometimes differently. So I love that, because it is more educational and it's more growth, you know, growth mindset of having new thoughts and then confirming, like I said, things that you kind of feel, you know, you as I'm peeling back the layers, it's not based on anything scientific or, you know, research. It's more just, I know I've got to have a reason in here somewhere, so I might as well pull it back.
Yeah. And you know, even my perspective on it, or what informs what I do is also not based a whole lot on formal education.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably started with me being my own test case, my own case study.
Yeah.
Like seeing, it really started, or it really, it became a necessity when I started my own business back in 2006. And when I would see myself lay out clear plans for like how to market the business, how to do something in the business, and then not follow through on those plans.
Like you would mean to, like and then so like you would have it and then just for whatever reason not complete the goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, like have I'm trying to think of an example. Like have a program I want to launch in my business and be able to like end to end plan out, okay, well, I need to market it, and here are the platforms I'm going to market it on, and here are the types of messages that I need to send out by email or social media or whatever. And then, okay, well, and then I need to actually execute the program. So here are going to be the steps to onboard people, and here's what the content of the program is going to be. And like, I would get that all written out.
You would do all the pre-work.
I would do all the pre-work, all the planning, all the figuring out, and then nothing. Like then just get hugely distracted. And next thing I know, you know, it's a month later and I'm like, what the heck happened to that project?
Yeah.
And so then I would look at myself and be like, well, you're so freaking smart. How can you know all of this stuff and get it all figured out and then not do it? Like I would get so beyond frustrated, like blameful with myself, and really like just pile on the guilt and shame.
Yes. Guilt and shame.
And
yes.
And I can't even say I went looking for a way to get over that. It was really like, it was given to me. I really honor the role of God in my life to hand me what I needed at the moment, where it was either do this or you're going to totally miss the boat on your life purpose. So like, as it happened, so my business started as massage therapy and Reiki,
and that's when we met each other, because that was back in 2008-ish. We met, I think.
Yes.
So that was soon after you started your business.
Yeah. So I would have
met.
been a couple years in at that point.
Yeah.
And it was probably right at the moment where I hit that first big stuck point.
Yeah. That
a friend of mine out of nowhere said, "Hey, I've got this friend who's teaching this thing called theta healing. It's another form of energy healing, and thought you might be interested in it." And at first I was like, no, not in, no. I know everything I need to know.
Because you're very sciencey. Were you I can't remember. You have to refresh my memory, but
I'm actually both now. My background before I became a healer, I have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science Engineering.
That's what it was, because I remember when I met you, it was like, wait, she's like computer science engineering, and then she's like talking about energy healing?
Yeah.
Like, what? I need to know more about this person. How did this all come together?
Yeah. Well, and that's an awesome story unto itself. You want to hear that story?
Yeah, I do. So, yes, I want to make sure we wrap up what we were talking about. Oh, so you started to get into the Reiki. No.
The theta healing. Basically, theta healing was the first new form of energy healing that I was introduced to. A friend showed up with this, hey, here's this idea for this class you might want to take. And at first I was like, no way. And it's funny to me because now I know when I have resistance that strong to something, I know it's actually a yes, and it's just my ego popping up and saying, no, that's going to create too much growth. Not ready to go there. Stay small and stay safe instead.
Ooh, okay, this is another moment where we need to stop and pause.
We're going to have a lot of those because I'm full of them.
So because on Gretchen, on our podcast that we did, episode 7, she said, if something rattles you, it's because it resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
So repeat what you said, is that when you have resistance towards doing something.
Yeah. Now I can't remember what words I use, but
that's okay.
Yeah. When I have that strong a reaction and a resistance to something, then I know it's actually something I need to do and that it's going to create great growth for me.
Okay. So here's a question for you.
Uh-huh.
So just to give the listeners a little background. So we talked earlier about we didn't know exactly where this would go. But Christina and I are both passionate about talking about things that sometimes feel hard or that you wouldn't ask. And so I'm very excited that we have this time together. So my question is kind of one of those, I feel like I could easily skim over it, but I want to take advantage of our awesome opportunity together. So you said when you have that feeling, it means you need to do it. And I love that. I feel like I can relate to that. I feel that. There's a part of me that's thinking, well, but how do you know that that's not the, feeling inside, whether it's the intuition, Holy Spirit, whatever, you choose to, how you view life. How do you know that that's not hey, this is not good? What's your...
Because spirit never tells us no.
Oh.
Spirit is only ever moving us toward the yeses. And so it's either a yes or it's no signal at all.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the ways that I know that that's true is because whatever is true spiritually is also true scientifically. And what we think of as spirit is it's growth. Spirit is always moving us toward growth. That's the spiritual side of things. Meanwhile, scientifically, we are in an ever-expanding universe. Our whole universe is expanding outward from one single point. And so, because spirit and science would be doing the same thing, they'd have to be in alignment with each other. There can be no force that is offering the message contract if everything is naturally expanding. So when we're told to contract, it's coming from inside us. It's coming from fear.
I'm going to have to think about that more because that's a lot. So you know what I would love to chat about? Because we kind of didn't know exactly where we were going today. But I would love to hear more about the energy healing and thoughts on that and all that. And also we talked earlier about kind of God, because you and I were very similar with so many of our mindsets, but we might come at them a little differently. And that's kind of something that we said in polite conversation. It causes us to kind of have a little, what do you call, pause or whatnot?
Yeah, something that's supposed to, like a social rule that was put in place for the sake of politeness and avoiding conflict has actually become a taboo. Like it's become taboo to talk about God.
Yes.
And how crazy is that when God, for people who have faith of any kind, God is so important, but we've turned God into a taboo?
Yes. Yes. And that's, I think, why I'm excited to lean into this today. And it's funny because I said before, I was like, okay, I'm kind of nervous because I didn't know. I couldn't put my finger on it. And now with what you said earlier, I'm like, oh, I think it's just because it's that internal fear of like, I don't know, screwing up or something like that. I can't think of the right word. But But what I'm trying to change my mindset with is that I feel like I grew up very, I grew up in the church and whatnot, but like very open-minded, like loved hearing from people and difference. And then I feel like as I got maybe in my 20s-ish, it kind of felt like I need, like, I don't know why necessarily, but maybe outside forces that it's like, this is kind of the way to think. And I feel like the last few years have been, that doesn't feel, I think that God created everyone, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if he didn't want us to learn and grow from them, why are we all here together? So it's like, I'm feeling better about listening to other people. And I think that's maybe also part of maturing, is that you can hear other people's views and learn and grow from them, even if they're not the exact same as yours. What do you
I think I'm trying to, my mind saying, was there a question in there?
No, just kind of throwing out on the wall where I'm at. Like, that's just kind of my own journey, like not wanting to pigeonhole, like only talk about this thing. And so I guess to kind of bring back the point and to get to the question, thank you for that. So for example, I feel like if someone and you can attest to this, if you bring up something like energy healing,
mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure you've seen it and I've experienced it. It's like, oh, I can't talk about that. That's not in line with my spiritual views or my,
right.
thing. And so I guess I'd like to lean into that a little bit more because, I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that. Like just tell me more about it.
I have so many thoughts about it. So I think I'm looking for you to like lead me in a direction with it.
I don't know exactly.
Otherwise this will be a 3-hour
podcast
I know.
Episode. All right, listeners, buckle up. No. Okay, so let's start with this. Okay, so let's start with what is the energy healing? Let's start there. And then let's just start there. Let's do that. One step at a time.
Yeah. And even that there's so many ways I can answer that. It depends on the audience. So I will, what I'm going to do for the sake of this is I'm going to, if it's okay, kind of, I can feel my mind wanting to answer this in a way that's going to satisfy your whole audience. And that's not working for me.
Yeah.
So I really, I'm realizing what I need to do is just tune into this being a conversation between me and you and answer like that way too. I can like, we can feel into, okay, how are we responding to each other as we're having this conversation about a really awesome topic that has potential to also be really sticky and icky at certain moments.
And I'm actually glad you just said that because one of my friends said that when she listened to the podcast, she feels like it's like listening to someone have coffee in a coffee shop, like friends have coffee in the coffee shop and overhearing it. So I think that that's a good way to look at it because today's podcast is a little bit different because we're not going through just straight out. Like, I mean, I think you could give such good advice on so many topics. But because today we're kind of going at a different angle, I think that's good because then it's like, hey, I'm figuring this out. You're figuring this out. And if people want to kind of go on this journey with us, then we're here.
Yeah.
You're here.
And if this turns out to be the episode that didn't resonate with them and, they hit stop halfway through, well, yeah. Good thing that wasn't the video podcast.
I just made a gesture just as a joke, but maybe serious. I don't know. No, that's just my own anxiety being released. So
good.
Okay. So what is energy healing?
What is energy healing? Well, one might think I have an easy answer to that since I've been doing it for 15 years. And what I find instead is the further I get into it, the less clear I am on how to answer that question.
Okay.
Because it is so much. But let me take a stab at it.
Yeah, take a stab.
So energy healing is dead air.
Dang.
I think I just telepathed you the whole answer. Did you hear that?
So I will tell you what so as I said, it's almost like I feel because of the way, you hear circles of people talk about things. To me, energy healing was in the category of kind of like, oh no, that's that. We'll just say woo woo. That's like a nice way to say that's that woo woo stuff. But then, just like with meditation, prayer, whatever, it's like you can't go wrong. I feel like no matter what your faith is, like on focusing on, your creator.
Yeah.
And and pausing and being quiet, so things like that. And so, the more where, let's say 10 years ago, if you heard the word meditation, it's like, oh, we can't, no, I don't meditate. I pray. Like, okay, for me, I can kind of say I can see, I guess I can take from it, So with energy healing, let's say 10 years ago, it was like, oh, that's that woo-woo stuff. Well, now I just saw something on Facebook today. It said, if talking to a plant helps it grow better, like talking positively to a plant helps it grow better, imagine how we talk to people.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking. I'm like, that's funny. I saw that today. That doesn't seem like a coincidence that you're coming in today. Because I feel like my nature would be to say, energy healing? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But then as I get older and kind of just see more, it's like there is power in, I mean, I feel like prayer is positive, things. And that silly plant thing on Facebook, it's like, oh, is that, like, it makes me want to Google it now. Like, is that legit? I know I've seen it, but like, is that scientifically proven? And well, if that must be true for that, how can it, so I guess I feel like I'm more in like, there must be something there. Maybe that's my point. Like,
yeah.
So I don't need to be afraid of this.
No.
Maybe that's like for me, my growth, and why it's like going from, oh, this is different, so therefore I need to keep it at an arm's length, to I can learn about this and be open to it and even benefit from it.
Yeah. And I'm thank you for filling in that dead air moment, because it gave me a moment to check in with, like, why was I afraid to come up with an answer? Why? Because there's nothing I love talking about more than what I do. So for me to have that moment of I have no words to say, I was like, okay, I'm blocking myself for some reason. And it's because I have that perspective that says there is one God, that we are all, that is the source of everything. And we're calling God by different names. We've been taught different traditions for how to respect God and connect with God. But underneath it all, every human being is reaching for the same thing. Mm-hmm. And, we want to be loved. We want to be worthy. We want to be powerful. We want to enjoy our lives. Mm-hmm. And so this thing called energy healing, which is more of a field of things versus one specific thing. Okay. To me, it's very much a spiritual tool, a spiritual experience. And my hesitation was, okay, so do I explain this in terms of, like, do I use my language or your language, or put a lot of energy into, like, trying to justify how it is the same, it is the same thing? Because to start answering the question,
it's interesting. That in and of itself was interesting. Like that even went through your head.
Yeah, the whose language do I use?
Yeah.
Well, and that's something
interesting.
That's something I do naturally. Is I try to speak the other person's language, so, to make it easier for them to understand me. Just like if your primary language was German and you didn't know English, it wouldn't do any good for me to speak English to you. Also, wouldn't do any good for me to try to speak German to you, since I don't know German, and I don't know why I picked German. But anyway,
I'm going to a German restaurant on Sunday with my family, so that's really crazy that you said German. And I lived in Germany for a few years, so
perfect. Well, see, there's no accidents.
See,
So usually the way that I do things is I'll explain things in the context that the listener is going to understand. And there's something in me tonight that is suddenly like, no, let's not do it that way. Let's use my natural language. And I don't know which is better, which is right. So whatever. I think just jump into it, right?
Just jump into it. I really like that perspective, though. And so I think that you should use whatever language you want to use. But I think that that's pretty cool that you can even do that, because I think it shows that what you're doing can be universal.
Yeah.
Universal.
Yeah.
Because I feel like just using the term New Age, I don't know if that's a term that's used anymore. Or
It is.
I feel like that feels, and so correct me if I'm wrong, because what I'm understanding is like I would have put New Age in a category, where now it feels like, maybe it is, I don't know, but like there's things that are universal. I don't know, but I guess that could be true for anything. So I don't know what I exactly meant by that.
Yeah, and I don't know that everybody uses the term New Age the same way. I think in a lot of contexts, it's a synonym for spiritual but not religious, or spiritual but not Christian specifically.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot in the New Age category that borrows from Hinduism and yoga and all of that. And in fact, there's going to be a lot of rabbit holes and side tangents, but what just popped in my head is when I was looking at expanding Zanquility, my former brick and mortar business, when I was looking at expanding into retail, one of my frustrations was I could go to my wholesale distributors and I could get stuff that had like Hindu gods and goddesses and Buddhist stuff and yoga stuff. None of them carried Christian stuff. And it was really important to me to honor all paths. And it's a frustration I have with the New Age world that there is something to, okay, Christians are separated in certain people's minds. And I want to bridge that gap. I think all paths lead to the same truth.
I think that's really cool. That's very interesting, because I think that, I think people would feel, I would say that I would be surprised that you would say that. So that's interesting. I'm not surprised because we've had so many interactions. So I'm not surprised by that. But let's just like rewind a few years. I would have been surprised by that. Because I would have thought, oh, well, how does my, we'll say, core values, my truth, how can we sync up? I would have thought it wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, wait, so you're telling me we can connect?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the dang podcast, people.
Yeah. So, for example, tracing back up the tangent to what is energy healing.
Yeah.
One of the ways I sometimes describe it to people is it's pretty much the same thing as faith healing. At least from my outsider perspective of what faith healing is. My understanding is there are Christian churches where people lay hands on people and it promotes healing. It creates a miracle or facilitates a miracle, or, whatever the most acceptable language is there. And really the idea here is when something like that is possible and when something like that is in the highest and best good for everyone, it pops up all over the world in all different ways. So Reiki, for example, which is a popular energy healing technique that is from Japan, it's a laying on of the hands and where the practitioner connects with God to get their own egos out of the way and become a channel for pure, loving, healing energy. It just happened to be created in Japan by a man who didn't, instead of referring to God, they refer to ki. Ki is the word. It's a word that means energy. But if you talk to people about energy healing, they're going to use the language that sounds a lot like they're connecting to God to help, to help people heal, to be a facilitator or a channel. I don't know that there's any energy healer, certainly none that I've ever met, who believes that they themselves are doing the healing. We all believe that we're channels. And anybody who doesn't shouldn't be doing energy healing because it's not going to work right.
Huh. Interesting.
That's my 2 cents anyway.
Very cool. Very cool. It's just interesting. And I'm thinking of like Jacqueline and I's chat, and how she kind of went on this, how she kind of grew into this. So I'd love to hear kind of like, what has been your evolution of, because I said with her, it was like, how did you get here? So you were a computer science engineer.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about energy healing, which makes sense to you, and I know when you share your story, it'll make sense. But I would say on paper, those two seem very far away.
Right.
On paper. So you bridge the gap. Share some of your journey. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I should probably start with, I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And I was such a devoted Catholic that when I think I was 16, I know I was in high school, one other girl in my church and we got commissioned to be Eucharistic ministers, the ones who give out the communion. Very young Eucharistic ministers, but I was like such the good follower, the good young Catholic person.
Student, yes.
That when I don't know whose idea it was to have such young people do it, but I was like, oh, you find me worthy of that? Great, I'll do it. And
there's a part of me, by the way, that I'm like, they may have needed the extra help.
all the adults.
You were worthy.
No.
You were worthy. No.
And then I went to college.
Okay.
And I got out of that bubble of really of being in my family and in my home, my parents' home, out from underneath my father's strong influence. And I started asking myself questions about, well, what do I believe? And it actually started really with the political side of the church, because as a freshman in college, I was in a social justice program. And this was 1992-93. So like gay rights weren't like, it was not what it is now. Like it was something that had to be like, conversations had to be forced. So for us to have classes where we were talking about gay rights and poverty and racism, like
where'd you go to school, by the way?
Bucknell University.
Oh yeah, I applied there.
And so being in those classes helped me realize how misogynistic and homophobic the Catholic Church was. And I'm someone where if I'm going to associate with an organization, I have to be 100% on board with what they represent. So I wrote a letter home to my parents to say, Mom and Dad, I'm not Catholic anymore. And my father wrote back, and this ends up influencing like the next 20 years of my life. My father wrote back and said, I don't remember it verbatim, but it was basically, you'll come back. You'll figure out that you've made the wrong decision and you'll come back. Which hurt. Not having my father's approval, having him basically say, I love you, but you're wrong. But that then opened the door to me questioning everything. Like, who is this Jesus guy? Did he really exist? And by the time I got out of college, I was never completely an atheist, but I was probably an agnostic or a humanist. I always believed in the goodness of people. Like I would say, I have faith that I can walk down the street and nobody's going to mug me. I have faith that people are inherently good. But I spent all of my 20s like not even wanting to use the G word. The word God did not escape my lips. And in the meantime, I was a IT programmer working in the hardcore, computer IT world. And I ended up on this project, rebuilding the like core computer systems for a major company that I can't name. And
Please don't. We do not want to get sued.
And I was on that project for 2.5 years because it was basically a train wreck that had been underbid. And so they were trying to cut corners, but then that was affecting deadlines. And
now, how many listeners are trying to put their minds together to see which company this is?
Nobody.
I did for about 1 second.
Oh, really?
And then I was like, wait, I have no knowledge of any of this stuff. Why am I even going on this tangent in my head?
That's funny.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Go ahead.
And I realized the only way I was going to get off this project was to leave the company. So this was September 2003, back before online job searches were the thing. So I spent one Sunday afternoon that September on the floor of my townhouse living room with the Washington Post mega jobs section. And, the IT, I'm gesturing with my hands. The IT section was however many inches thick. And I went through that thing one page at a time, reading every single ad. And none of those IT jobs spoke to me. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw the healthcare section, and I thought, well, maybe there's a job in there doing IT work for a hospital, and they put it in healthcare instead of IT. So I grabbed the healthcare section, and I flipped one page in, and I flipped 2 pages in, and as I turned the page that second time, my eyes landed on a photo ad for a massage therapy school. And it's like the stereotype you would expect, with this zoomed in on one person's hands on top of another person's back.
Yes.
And I looked at that, and from somewhere in the core of my being, like really a supernatural experience, I looked at that and I said, that's what I need to be doing.
Wow.
And the crazy thing about it, that it didn't occur to me until I was 2 months into the school that I went to. It was a really ridiculous decision for me to make if I had tried to rationalize it, because I had personal space issues and I didn't really like touching people. And so if it had ever been a decision I had thought about, I totally wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But it was a moment of divine guidance or divine intervention where like there was no saying no to this. The momentum of it was so strong that it sent me on the search for the right school. And it eventually even got me to quit my job. Like I tried to do school and job at the same time. And with every week I spent in school, my skin would crawl while I was at work. Like it got harder and harder to be in my job. And so finally I talked to my husband at the time, and we figured out that we could afford for me to not work. Yeah. So I quit my job. I went to school full time during the day instead of night classes. And it was the best thing I ever could have done.
That's so great.
It was such a rich experience. I actually graduated on time, whereas most of the people who were in the evening classes, they still had so many credits and requirements they had to fulfill after we walked at the end of the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that put you on the path.
That put me on the path.
Change in.
Yep. So that's how I made the leap from in between the two worlds. Yeah. And then while I was in massage school, one of my classmates was a Reiki master. Oh, okay. At that time, back in 2004, Reiki wasn't formally taught anywhere. It was something you actually went to classes in people's living rooms, and it was passed down from one person to the next. And so this classmate talked to us about Reiki and said, hey, I'll teach a class if you guys want to come over one Sunday. Wow. And what convinced me or inspired me to learn it wasn't like she tried to present the science of Reiki and prove that it was real. For me, it was the passion with which she talked about it that I was like, okay, there's something to this, because look how it moves her. And that's why I said yes to my first energy healing class.
Very cool.
Yeah, and now I'm thirsty.
Now you're thirsty. Me too. So that is quite the journey. And I love what you said about like seeing the massage therapy school and doing that and how it made no sense. So when that happened, other than, I mean, you said that it was definitely like divine intervention or a spirit, I forget your exact words, but was there any point in time between seeing it, hey, I'm going to do that, and then applying it where you had the doubt? Or was it so clear?
It was such a clear desire. It took over me. Wow. So it didn't feel like an outside calling. It felt like I want to do this. Wow. That's how strongly spirit was moving me.
That's so cool. So what have you, this might be another open-ended question, but you've gone on this journey, not only, work-wise and then beliefs and all this. What are a couple things you'd say you've learned along the way? That could be very open-ended. So
what have I learned along the way? Again, how many hours do you have?
So many, I know. So off the top of your head.
Just trusting the first thing that comes to mind. I learned how much our childhood affects who we are as adults.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, in my case, I was telling the story this morning. Well, I didn't tell the story, but I referenced in our networking meeting this morning that I had challenges in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, she had problems of her own. She had her inner demons that she took out on me. Her erratic behavior, mood swings, screaming at me, hitting me. And what's interesting about that is I never thought of myself as an abused child because, of course, each child has their own experience. They're not aware of what's normal and what's
you don't
not.
know it's different.
It was really when I got to college and I was in that social justice.
And
this is just clicking for me right now as we're sitting here, that it was in those social justice classes when we started talking about child abuse. That was the first time I ever realized, wait, that's me. That's what I experienced growing up. Now, are there children who have had it worse than I did? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I had my experience.
But I read something recently, and I'm going to totally screw it up, and so I shouldn't even mention it probably, but it was about that our pain is not like measured against other people's pain.
Right.
So it's like, that doesn't change the trauma just because other people have had what we call worse trauma. And yes, I mean, there is horrible, horrible trauma, but it's to you, you know, it doesn't take away your trauma.
Exactly. And now I know, I mean, this is what sent me down the path of this whole mindset healing stuff, because, I'm like, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, at what point did I start to realize how miserable I was?
That you needed a change.
That I needed a change. That it was really like, I'm no longer tolerating this misery anymore. And I think it might have been when I started my business and there was a tangible way that the misery was getting in the way.
Yeah. And there's nothing you can't blame it on anything else.
Right.
Because you're the only one in your business.
Right. And the other thing about working for yourself is there's no, like, when you're working in really for anyone else, there's always someone you're accountable to, where it's like, okay, I can motivate myself to do what I don't feel like doing because so-and-so is going to get mad or fire me or whatever.
You're motivated by those external factors.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And then when you work for yourself, it's a blessing and a curse. It's like, hey, I get to decide what I work on and when, but I have to decide what I work on and when and actually follow through on it. That's
for me when I was doing Mary Kay full time. Hopefully I'm allowed to say that. I don't know how
this Are they a sponsor?
I don't know. Like they might know, and they would probably definitely not want to. But I loved it, and I loved it for many reasons. But I always joke that I was like the worst boss though, because I loved the flexibility so much and I gave myself so much flexibility. Yeah. But one of the best advices I got from one of my mentors, friends and whatnot, but she, it was at the time where I was like, oh, I want to earn the pink Cadillac, you know, and was moving up and doing stuff. But then Jeremy and my husband and I started dating, and I would drive down to Virginia. We would see each other every other weekend. And he would come up at like Friday night to Sunday afternoon because, you know, he had to work.
Yeah.
And I had to work too, but I would go like Thursday to Monday because I could. And I remember sitting down and she was like, you can't. She said, you need to stop saying you want the pink Cadillac. And when I first heard it, I was like, oh, what? But she said, your actions are not, and it's not bad, but you need to be like honest with yourself because you keep setting yourself up for disaster saying that's what you want. I mean, it was a much bigger conversation, but what we eventually got to was that you're right. No, my priority was I wanted to invest in this relationship, and that wasn't where my focus was right now. And so to stop saying that, because I was investing all this mental energy into wanting it.
Yeah.
And then it just continued the feelings of the guilt and shame, kind of like we talked about before of like, but then, well, I didn't even really, if I peeled back the layers, I didn't even really want that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, but the question that's popping in my head is, would a pink Cadillac be something you would want if it's not what was being dangled as the carrot? Like, would you want a pink car?
No, but that's a good question. But I would say, well, no, but a free car, yes. I thought I wanted that level of career. So it wasn't about the pink. That was just, even at the time I said I didn't care about it. Like, I honestly didn't care about that. It was that career point, that success point, that productivity point and whatnot. And so, when it wasn't even about that, I really didn't want that career point. I really didn't want that much responsibility, that much to put that much into my business. I wanted to take advantage of the flexibility and the smaller income to be able, because I wanted to have a good relationship, and like be able to take advantage of that face-to-face time and, change and growth. But that for me was like a nice, like, aha moment of, oh, but had I not been working for myself, I always think, where would I be had I not been doing that? How things would have unfolded, but anyway. So interesting.
Yeah.
So you said, so I asked, what are things you've learned along the way? How much our childhood affects us?
Yeah.
So before we go on to another thing, I want to say, okay, what do we do about it then? So if we're effed up from our childhood, because I know the story doesn't end there because you're living proof.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, we could have a whole other thing, which I'm sure we'll have to do more. But just what's the hope that you can give for, being traumatized is not the end of the story?
Well, certainly my way that I was led to deal with this was using energy healing. And so what that means, I was shown that we hang on to our traumatic experiences in our energy and in our minds. We trap emotions in our minds, in our bodies. And so there needs to be a way, if we want to let the past go, we have to literally let the past go from our bodies. We are hanging on to the past in our bodies.
And how do we let that go? Through energy healing.
Well, you book get acquainted session with me.
Yeah.
But
just for even, one, if people want to, but also just to wrap their mind around it.
Right.
Like, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like,
yeah, I know that was not really like a insert plug here. Sort of
and that's okay that you did. No problem. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just like,
it's also that's my sense of humor.
I love it. I love it. You are the queen of the
I'm the queen of the world.
So, I mean, hello.
How dare you almost forget that? I heard that hesitation.
Well, no, I didn't know if it was world or universe. That was the hesitation.
Well, that's my next promotion.
Yeah, see, there you go. You got it all in good time. You can't have it all at once.
I'm waiting for the current queen of the universe to kick the bucket. And then,
who is it? Dang.
Well, if you don't know, then... if you're obviously not in the in circle. Okay, so
the in circle. I was trying to think who I would want to put in there, and then I'm like, well, I don't want to promote anyone. We want to hurry up and kick the bucket.
Right,
you can take
right.
over. So I'm like, I can't throw anyone into that position. Okay,
anyway,
how does the energy healing work for someone that is not familiar with?
So
like, how do you let it go? Is that kind of like the meditation that we've done, the guided meditation that we did kind of this morning? We had a meeting.
It is, and yet there's a lot going on under the surface when I lead something like that.
Yeah.
That's my part of like my role as the healer is to become the clear connection to God, which, and I'm gesturing with up and down hands as if God is above us.
Yeah.
But really God is everywhere.
Yeah.
God is already within us.
Yeah.
So it's not about like, our language is insufficient for it. It's not about connecting with something that we are otherwise disconnected from. It's about, as the healer, I am practiced in my ability to push the human stuff out of the way and let God's love flow.
So do you feel like you help people push that stuff aside? Maybe that's what you just said, but
yes,
take away the distractions.
It's like step 1 of a session is me doing that for myself. And then step 2 is me connecting with the client. It used to be hands-on.
Yeah.
But now like I can connect with you right here sitting across the room. I can connect over a Zoom call with somebody who's in Norway. Like, yeah, it's because God's love is everywhere.
Yeah.
And so we can use it to connect with anyone, anywhere.
So sometimes I get very insecure being around therapists and people like you now that are like, I can see you. And hello, my whole podcast is about I want people to be connected and to feel seen and to see others. So that is what I'm all about.
Yes.
But it's just, I always have this like, it's a joke, but it's kind of serious. Like, you can see me. Like, I can't hide anything. That's why when I told the joke I had written in the Facebook group yesterday about, I say I work out for my health, but then I only get 4 minutes of credit on my Apple Watch. And I wonder what's the point of it all. And I shared it because it was funny, but I knew when I shared it, I didn't know like for a fact you would comment, but I just, because you and I are very similar, like I see the humor in it. And actually what I wanted to type under it was, but I was like, oh, I'm going to save this for the podcast. Ooh, and I almost forgot. I started to type, I rope him in with the humor and you like slide in with the deep stuff. Like that's because that's kind of my thing is like, okay, let's joke. But I really do love the deep stuff. I love getting to the heart, peeling back the layers. So my approach a lot of times is, funny. But like I said, when I wrote that, I was like, I know there's so much here. Yes, it's a joke, but like, there's more here. And then when you commented like, that there was something about worth in there. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
You're
like
right.
You're relying on the watch to assign to recognize your worth. But I remember from you talking with Dawn, like you have an old Apple Watch, right? That doesn't.
Hers is, I think ours are the same generation. And she pointed out that maybe hers doesn't always work. But now I'm thinking maybe mine doesn't always work because I didn't get my credit. So. Yeah. But maybe that's my competitiveness. Like I'm not really competitive, but I want to get what's mine,
Right. And if you're using a watch to gauge your, I was saying your worthiness, but if you're using it to measure your workout activity, but it's not good at recognizing your workout activity because you did 30 minutes and it only recognized 4. It's like, well, then it's terrible at evaluating your worth. So why would that be your judge?
Why would that be? I know. Oh, see. That's why I love these reminders of just, the things that you kind of know, but you need to be told and reminded. So as we wrap up, I love what you said about how important our childhood is. That is heavy stuff, but such good stuff. So any other just major aha moments you've had, like mind shifts, let's say?
Yeah, God's got all of us. Whatever path we're on. Nobody's path is a mistake, even if they've chosen atheism. Mm-hmm. I have chosen to see that as there's a reason why that's the best thing for them. And so we can get all caught up as people do in who's right and who's wrong. But it's so much wasted energy when the only thing I ever know is how God is talking to me and God is working with me. That's the only thing that's my business.
Nice way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Nice, happy love feelings. All right. So our ending of every podcast. So any recommendations? Now in the past, they've been books, but I was actually thinking that I wanted to throw in some curveballs, and your comment this morning at our networking meeting made me think of it about, you said at night to help you go to sleep, you put on a favorite TV show, a favorite episode. So I thought I might start throwing in like, what are some favorite? Because yes, I am all about like we need to have spiritual growth and read and enhance and blah, blah, blah. But also sometimes you need to check out and watch a TV show. So what would be some of your favorite TV shows? Or an episode that you pull up that you watch?
Yeah, I don't know that my favorites would be anything I would recommend to anything else. I am a I'm a fan of Family Guy from the beginning of its life. And, when I was talking this morning, so what I was saying this morning is how I fall asleep is I actually use my electronics and I pull up an episode.
You're a rule breaker.
I am.
All the rules are no electronics.
Yeah. Like, well, then that's what I have to do.
Yes. You're like, then I'm leaning into it.
Yeah. I have a couple episodes of Family Guy that I have watched so many times and I know so well. That what I realized what happens is I start that episode and my mind
it just knows.
It just knows.
Yep.
So it's enough to keep my attention, but not so much, like it's not so interesting to me that it's going to keep me awake. So because without that, I'd never fall asleep. My mind would just chatter on and on.
So I was surprised that you didn't say like guided meditation, because I listen to a guided meditation beach app and I go to the beach and fall asleep.
My mind would chatter right through that guided meditation.
That is so funny. So this is why I love talking and getting to know people, because I would have thought, oh, the energy healer definitely listens to a guided meditation. I love that, like, you are listening to Family Guy and all of the inappropriate jokes. And
yes, I love inappropriate jokes. Because it's about breaking taboos. And it's also sometimes a check-in, like, wait a minute, why did I find that funny? Like, Family Guy has a recurring character who is a pedophile.
Oh, gosh.
And there are moments where I'm like, why is this funny?
Yeah. Oh, it's so wrong. Yeah. But then people talk about it. That's why I love comedy, though.
Yeah.
And that's been my struggle with comedy is in private and now on the podcast, a little more public, talk about real stuff. But then I love, like, I mean, hello, it started with pooping my pants, like, but that's not really what I'm about. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, people. I will hear all your stories about that. But I realized that for me, comedy is a way to break the ice. Mm-hmm. And so I think that with all those controversial, especially the cartoon ones, Simpsons.
Yeah, because they can get away with so much more because it's animated.
But then, like I said, you sit here having a conversation about something that you wouldn't, because if it was real, it's just too real. So anyway, okay, Family Guy. I wouldn't have seen that one come in, and I love it. That's so funny. Like, I love that you said that. That's so great. Any other recommendations off the top of your head that are beneficial to you? Any TV shows you're watching or any mindless things that you do to turn off your mind? Because you said earlier, we were like, we don't talk about the weather. We don't talk about this. And now I'm asking you, what TV shows do you watch?
Right.
It's the exact opposite of everything we talked about.
Well, this is one of those things that made me look at why do I do what I do? Because I got sucked into watching all 20 seasons of Law and Order Special Victims Unit.
So, the episode that just came out with Kathleen, Jerry Orbach, which he was not in SVU though. He lived next door to her at the time boyfriend or fiance. He was in the same building. Mm-hmm. And I had said I was coming off my Law and Order binge, because when I was in college, I would go to sleep to Law and Order. And so when you mentioned today about Family Guy, I every night watched Law and Order SVU, and I had to stop because I lived alone. And I would call my mom and say things like, Mom, if I go missing, make sure to, check for DNA evidence. Because I was like always thinking about that. And I kind of needed to step back a little bit from that. Because it kind of got in my brain a little bit. Yeah. So you watched all 20 seasons?
I guess technically 19, because I went to watch 20 and it's not free on Amazon Prime yet. So, and I realized what I was doing, I had asked myself, is this because I'm attracted to the drama of it?
Yeah.
I finally realized it was practice for me, in the sense that, most of the spiritual people that I'm surrounded by would say, well, that's negative energy. You shouldn't be, letting yourself get sucked into that. But the world is full of negative energy. Mm-hmm. We cannot protect ourselves from it all 24/7, and we really shouldn't be. I've realized in the last couple of years that the goal is to be able to be the calm in the middle of the chaos.
Yes.
The goal is to be able to be anchored in love, no matter who's around you, so that like Jesus, we can go out among people who haven't found their path to love yet and share that with them. Let them vibrate off of that for a little while. To have that positive influence on the world. And if we try to shield ourselves from it all the time, then we can't do that. So watching 19 years worth of Law and Order in the course of 2.5 months gave me a lot of...
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What's the math on that one?
I said I binge.
You don't sleep, I bet. Are you like someone who can handle a little sleep, or do you need a lot?
Oh, I sleep a lot.
You do?
But I work on my business and I sleep and I watch TV. Like, nice. That's what my life has been for, like, most of this year.
Nothing wrong with that. That is...
Yeah.
where you were at. That's great.
And so again, in watching all 19 years worth of Law and Order Special Victims Unit, I practiced being able to witness really horrific things and not let it affect how I feel, or to notice, ooh, this is affecting me. How do I come back into that happy space? And it sounds really weird to say, I want to be able to watch somebody getting raped and still feel full of joy. Like that, that doesn't compute for most people. But if you can do that, then you can be around someone who's having a bad day.
But that's the thing. That's about hearing someone's story, though. Like, that's the kind of stuff that happens to people. And so I like what you said about, don't be around negative energy. But negative stuff happens in this world. And for me, I'm just a big believer in sitting in the ashes with people. Yeah. And, if you kind of know that stuff happens,
right,
then I feel like you can sit in it. Because, when I was preparing for the talk I gave this morning about vulnerability and shame and whatnot, Brene Brown talked about the people not to share your story with, and not just the little things, but the real deep hurts. And, it just included, like, one of them that I remember stuck out was people that feel shame for you.
Yeah.
And people who question how you could let it happen, and people who are disappointed in you. And it's just, it goes through this whole thing. And not only is it helpful because it's, I want to make sure not to tell my story with people like that, but it's also, dang, I don't want to be someone who does that if someone shares their story with me.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's funny you mentioned Law and Order, because I had an aha moment when you were saying that, because I watched Orange is the New Black, like when it came out, and like the first season was like very, whoa, gosh, there's a lot TVMA on there. And I remember I was like embarrassed to a certain degree that I watched it, just because it was like a little like, whoa, a little bit much. But I loved it. Like the characters, just like, these were all people that in my normal daily life. And yeah, they're fictional, but they're based on just not even an actual person, but people. And I just remember it helped. I just remember kind of when I was really in the thick of watching it, these people that, wow, when you see more of their story, because it starts out, they're just in prison, but then each kind of person, they give flashbacks and kind of how they got there.
Yeah.
And it just changes your whole mindset with them. And I thought, we can be such better friends, parents, spouses, all of that. The more I feel like exposure you have to different people's life experiences, that way when they do share it with you, like you said, you're able to stay that calm.
Yeah. Instead
of it blowing your mind, because you've never heard anything like that before.
Right. You need to be able to sit in the ashes with someone without getting burned yourself.
That's good. Oh, that's good. Oh, dang. Oh, well, on that note. Oh, gosh. Oh, you know what? Okay, so two things. I'm going to ask you the last question, which is, what is the conversation you want to either start or stop having? But then, per request of Natasha today, will you send us out with a nice breathing, meditation-y something to help close us off? Is that possible?
Yes, I can make it short and sweet. Yeah.
Although except I know so many people listen to this driving, but so maybe not like a total like I've
got the thing. We're good.
Okay, see, I knew you would, but I just feel like we should end it on like a nice little thing. So okay, so any conversations you want to start or stop having?
Following through on what I was saying a few minutes ago, I want to, and I hope more people will join me in this. I want to stop having conversations about who's doing what wrong. A lot more minding my own business.
I like that. As a rule follower, like not on purpose, just kind of part of me. I think that I didn't ever worry about that too much with others. And then getting older, you kind of think, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? But then does that mean it's wrong? There's always this constant wrong. So I really like that idea of not worrying about that.
How much of the violence and the tension and the anger in this world is because everybody is looking at what the other person is doing, or the other country is doing, or the other religion is doing, and needing them to be wrong so that I can be right.
So I like what you just said there about needing them to be wrong so I can be right.
Yeah.
And we talked a little, we kind of said beforehand about maybe talking about this whole God thing and how that's kind of something that we shy away from. And what I kind of realized, and you actually mentioned it with your journey, is that I want to be, I don't know what the word is, confident, whatever, in my faith. And that means being able to talk about different faiths, different beliefs. And same with raising our kids, you know what I mean? Raising them that not sheltered so that when they get out into the world, it's suddenly like their mind is blown.
Yeah.
But having them exposed to the world,
Right.
like I said, still like having, at least for myself, having my core and kind of guiding that maybe, but not being afraid. I just feel like I'm trying to get away myself. I don't mean to insert myself in your answer, but because we're kind of, on this journey, that I just really like that about not worrying about people being wrong.
Yeah.
I think leaning into people more.
And on what you just said about faith, my 2 cents on that, which might piss off some of your audience, is that true and complete faith is not threatened by outside ideas.
No, 100. I would say that if that does frustrate someone, that to me, if that were to, it's like, if that makes me uncomfortable, which it's not at this moment, but if it did, I go back to Gretchen's comment, like if it rattles you, then it resonates,
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I said before, like, okay, well, I want to talk about God and, I feel like, well, I don't want to get too theological because that would make me nervous. But I think there's also this, that feeling of if we talk about this too much, I don't want it to rattle, mine. And I think that over the years, I've come to that realization that, wait a second, if talking about stuff were to rattle my faith, then like, I got to work on my faith. So I want to lean into being able to talk about, have more of the difficult conversations, uncomfortable conversations. But I love what you said about worrying about other people being wrong.
Because then we never get to see what we have in common, and we don't get to see what's right about what the other person's doing.
Yes.
But either way, it's really not even our business.
Yeah. But that's why, with the pod, like, that's why I appreciate you coming and sharing, because we are all, like you said it much nicer earlier, but about we all have the same goal.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing out. And like I said, if I believe that God created everyone and he didn't want us to be with everyone, like, or at least that's my belief, so like, why would we not lean into each other? So
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was awesome.
I know. I enjoyed it. So why don't you send us off?
Okay.
Somehow, I don't know. I'm just going to put the ball in your court.
Okay. It's going to be very short and sweet, but very comforting and grounding. So,
okay.
Assuming that if you're hearing my voice right now, you are in a place where it is safe for you to close your eyes. So not if you're driving a car, not if your kids are talking to you right now, but if you can, close your eyes and take 3 deep cleansing breaths. And as your breathing returns to whatever pace is natural for you right now, let your next breath drop down into your heart space. Noticing how instantly tension begins to leave your body. And let your next breath drop down into your belly. And let your next breath drop as far down your spine as it feels comfortable to go right now. And then just stay in this place as long as you'd like to. Breathing at a natural pace. Giving thanks to your body and your mind and your spirit. And then moving forward with whatever's coming next in your day, completely relaxed and at home, right here where you are. And I have loved watching you guys put this together and taking it step by step, you know, like when you were trying to get it onto all the different platforms. And I was like, hey, you know, how about Google Play?
Thank you for that.
And, you know.
Oh, you were Google Play.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So he's not on Facebook. So I go back and I'm like, Christina just said we need to be on Google Play. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Like 5 minutes later, you come back.
Let me look up how to do it. Okay.
Okay, so I have a question for you because I don't know the answer to this. Well, I don't know what you think. I don't know what my answer is to this. Do you see me as an extrovert or an introvert?
That's a good question. Well, you are not an anomaly. I have to.
I'm a rule breaker, so I don't.
You're
fit
a
either
rule
category.
breaker, and like I said in the podcast, you listen to Family Guy. No, you listen to guided, peaceful healing.
Fuck no.
Like, so that's why. So I don't base introvert extrovert at its and core sounds too deep of a word. But the way I simplify it is, do you get energy from people? At the end, do you feel drained or do you feel filled? And so for myself, yes, I'm an extrovert, but I also realized my life, I have a lot of downtime. So I can only be as go because I have so much quiet time. But my needs for social interaction, but genuine social interaction, is higher than introverts. So that's why I think I'm still on the extrovert side. So for you, it's a tough call because you like connecting with people. And there's a part of me that thinks that connecting with people brings you energy because you want to have that genuine connection. So I think that you could fall on the extrovert side from being lifted up from being with people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out about myself because so much of my life, the first several decades, it was an experience of isolation. I didn't feel connected to anyone. And the connections that I had were, filled with pain. So, of course, they weren't going to energize me. They were going to drain me. And I just got accustomed to being alone. That's what felt safest. But it was like a false introversion.
Yes.
Or a forced introversion. And what I'm finding now is, I love connecting with people. And if it's an energy where it's like it's a give and take in balance, like you and I, we could keep talking for 5 more hours and I'd be like, give me more.
Yes.
But there are other people where, like, I went to a potluck dinner the other night and it was, first of all, it was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 dozen people in one house. So there was a lot of energy in there and I was empathing everybody.
What did you bring?
What did I bring? I went to Wegmans and I bought barbecue pork.
Ooh.
And because I love dessert, I also grabbed some rainbow chip cookies.
And have you ever had the Wegmans cannoli? We're getting off topic, but the Wegmans cannoli dip?
Oh my God, yes. yes. Now, do you, like, I think they sell just the dip. Do you buy just the dip or do you get it with
I don't ever buy
chips?
anything. There's a couple friends with that when we get together, like one in particular, that's like her thing to bring.
With close friends, that's what I bring. This was a bigger group.
Yeah, because that's pricey too.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
Anyway,
the dinner party.
so
now I'm like thinking
I
about
got there at 7, and by 8:30 I was drained. And I, when I look back on that, I know a lot of it was because of the conversations people tend to get into. Like let's connect by commiserating with through sharing the pain of how miserable work is, or you had that terrible thing happen, I did too. Now we're connected.
I just think that being in the entrepreneurial world, like you just meet a lot of people that are kind of open to having a lot more of the peel back the layers conversations. And so,
yeah, I'm trying to think what words I usually use to say this. I've often espoused is that the word, espoused? I've talked about how...
A word.
It's a word, yeah. Is it the one that belongs there? Who knows?
That's the other thing I get nervous about recording is because I say a lot of words that... And then I'm like, I don't know if they're real or not. So
anyway, the entrepreneurial path is it's the best path for personal development. It's the one that makes you look at who you are. And so if you're going to go anywhere with it, you get comfortable really fast at looking, at having the deep conversations and looking at yourself and having some level of vulnerability. And I say some level, there's like an asterisk on that because I was thinking today about what I call controlled vulnerability.
Have you heard calculated vulnerability?
Probably
I
the
almost
same
was
thing.
going to throw that out today, but I was like, there's so many tangents. I was like trying to not get too crazy, but...
So to make sure we're talking about the same thing, that the idea of, okay, well, I've got this part of my life worked out, and so I'll let you see that, not only because it's prepared and I know it's safe to talk about, but because it's also a misdirection that has you looking over here instead of looking at this part of my life that's still totally fucked up. And so real vulnerability is the willingness to let people see the fucked up stuff, or at least not having the fear that some of that might be seen in the periphery while you're sharing what you're ready to share. Yes.
So I thought about that because my pastor, who I love, I'm having conversations with him because I just appreciate him. But we talked about that because he was telling me that someone had brought up that term to him, calculated vulnerability. And I thought that was so good because that's, I think, what we do with groups. And so what I was kind of trying to touch on today was, because Brene Brown says how you only have one, maybe two, and then Oprah is when she's talking to Oprah, or she said one, and Oprah said maybe you have two or three, but she said, Brene calls them the move the body friends, like the people you can call up and say, like, I fucked up. Like, I said something horrible, like, sit with me in the shame and then let's work it out, Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where with today, okay, because I kind of thought like, well, what's my goal? Because I was just stressed about the order and what to share. I was just having a hard time. And so I kind of cleared my mind. And it was, I want people to walk, like, if they just walk out inspired to share something to help them continue on their journey, then like that's kind of, so instead of putting the pressure on that I need to share this amazing information that's going to change their life, or, should I share about me? How much, how little, that was kind of my end goal. But I touched upon the safe people and things like that. And because my point, and like I said, I need to go through this presentation and tighten it up and have it improve it. But yeah, you're not going to stand up in front of a group of 30 women and share your shit. Like, but when you're with one person that's a trusted person, like, share, go to those places.
Yeah.
But that's like why I kind of touched on my poop story, that's my calculated vulnerability. That's my, hey, oh my gosh, I'm so vulnerable. Because there's been so many times I've told that, oh, how would you ever say that? And I'm like, I realize that I'm like, this isn't me being vulnerable. Like,
right. Same as me talking about me and my mother.
Yeah.
I have talked about that enough times where every once in a while I'll go somewhere within the story that's like, ooh, I haven't tapped into that before. But most of the time I can talk about it as easily as I talk about, the weather or whatever, or what happened on Family Guy last night.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why I think when Brene said you only have a couple people to like really, really do that with. But it's amazing how many people don't, myself included. There's parts, all of us, that we don't want to share, you know?
And that's a wrap for now.
Thanks for listening to Flushing It Out with Samantha Spittle. Music provided by twinmusicom.org. Song titled Night at the Dance Hall. Sound editing by me, Jeremy Spittle. A special thanks to our studio sponsor, M&M Exteriors. Visit their website at mmexteriors.com for all of your roofing, siding, and gutter needs in the Northern Virginia area. Visit our website at flushingitout.com and be sure to subscribe. This has been a Spitfire production.
That was the greatest thing I've ever heard.